Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, we need to talk about how to fish a shaky head. A shaky head is a worm presentation that is pretty much in the finesse category. So it's when the bite is really tough, you don't know what to throw, a shaky head is a pretty good bet to get some bites. And essentially a shaky head is just a jig head style way of rigging a soft plastic worm, usually a straight tail worm without any like curl tails or anything like that. But though you can fish, you know, ribbon tail style worms or any type worm on a shaky head, but this is generally what you think of when you fish a shaky head. And there's a ton of different shaky head jigs on the market. You know, this right here is just a traditional ball style shaky head jig. This is what I really like the majority of the time. And but they make them, you know, with more mushroom shaped. They make them more bullet shaped. There's all different types of shapes and designs for shaky heads. You just got to find one that works for you. A lot of the shaky heads out there are designed to, as far as the jig head, are designed to make sure that the worm sticks straight up. Now, most of them really don't stick straight up in the water column. It really has more to do with the worm itself. And that's why I like to use Elastec worms for this presentation, because when it's resting, this bait will naturally, you know, float up because it's a buoyant material. So I use this one right here is the Z-Man SMH worms, which was specifically designed for a shaky head type presentation. And you know, you can't, there are plenty of different jig heads out there that you can use with traditional plastics that do a pretty good job of keeping the you know, the worm standing straight up. But in general, most of the traditional plastics will kind of fall on their side, which you'll still catch fish with them. I'm not downplaying how good traditional soft plastics can be, but I prefer to use a more buoyant material like Elastec. Because I really do think that one of the features of a shaky head that really attracts a lot of bites is when that worm is at resting, in its resting position, it's sticking straight up, okay, and just kind of moving subtly with the currents of the water, if there is any. So yeah, essentially it's a finesse type presentation for bass fishing, and it's just a fish producer. Now, the situations that you want to throw a shaky head in versus say like a Texas rig or like a drop shot or something like that, is traditionally long tapering structures are my favorite type of a situation for fishing a shaky head. So what I mean by that is like long points that take a long time to drop into deeper water, you know, really gradually sloping, not like steep banks or anything like that. You can catch fish in those situations, but my favorite situations are when I'm just dragging this bait on tapering structure, okay, or on shell beds or something like that. But the key is clean bottom, clear bottom, because if you're fishing like brush piles or grass or something like that, you may want to fish a Texas rig. It may be more efficient, just the way that the line comes off of the nose. I mean, we're still Texas rigging this, so it's weedless, as you can see here. But a Texas rig is going to come through that type of cover much better than a shaky head. But for clean bottom areas, you know, if you got rock, sand, or shell or anything like that, shaky head is a really good way to catch fish. But those slow tapering structures, man, when you get on those, either throw a Carolina rig or a shaky head, that's going to get some bites on the bottom. So as far as the tackle for fishing a shaky head, of course, you can mix and match. You can kind of make it your own and you know, customize your tackle as you see fit. But in general, I'm fishing it on spinning gear. I know some guys that fish it on bait casting gear, and that's fine. It's whatever you're confident in, but I use spinning gear. I usually like to use a 7-2 medium heavy rod. This one right here is the Fitzgerald Versa Series 7-2 medium heavy spinning rod. And then I use a spinning reel, of course. And then I like to have a main line of braid. So I use 15-pound Seagar Smackdown braid as my main line. And then I attach a 10 or 12-pound test leader to this. Now, I do know a lot of people that because they consider a shaky head a finesse presentation, they use a really light line. But I'm going to kind of advise against using like 6 or 8 pound test or something in that range, because a lot of the time, just because you're working this bait on the bottom and the line and the jig head are constantly making contact with whatever's on the bottom, it's going to chew up your line pretty good. So I like 10 and 12 pound test. Those are the two line sizes that I really lean on with a shaky head. And the reason is just because it's contacting the bottom constantly. With a drop shot or like even a Nico rig or something like that, you're not making as much contact with the bottom with your line, so you can use 6 pound test and get away with it because it's not getting chewed up. But with a shaky head, I really think it's important to upsize just a little bit, but you're still kind of in the finesse realm. So anyways, guys, that is the intro to the shaky head. I'm tired of talking, so let's get to fishing. All right, guys, so let's talk about how to fish a shaky head, some of the retrieves that you want to try. So the very first retrieve that I really like to implement, and this is probably my favorite overall retrieve, actually goes against the grain of what the name implies for a shaky head, and that is that you want to be shaking it all the time. But in fact, my favorite retrieve is to just cast it out there. And this is primarily what I'm going to do if we're talking about real gradual sloping contour. So like a point that goes way out. It's not like dropping really fast, you know, or a hump or saddle or whatever type of structure you're dealing with that doesn't really have a very steep drop to it. This is the retrieve that I like to use. And essentially what I'm going to do is once it's on the bottom, I'm just going to keep my rod tip down and to the side and just do a side drag. Let's change the angle of the camera here so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And I'll reel in the slack, but essentially all I'm doing is just dragging it on the bottom, not shaking it at all. All I'm doing is just what I call counting the shells or counting the rocks. You know, you're counting every little pebble down there and you're just moving it real slow. And occasionally I'll just stop. If I come to a real rough spot on the bottom that denotes, you know, harder bottom, maybe it's a little shell bed or something, I'll slow down and let it sit there for a while. All right. And, you know, as with all of these retrieves that I'm going to show you, you can add your own little flair to it. You know, if you come up to a little piece of, you know, like a stump or something, you can, you know, just sit there and kind of shake it in place for a little bit. But in general, the base technique is just dragging it. And this is probably my favorite way to fish a shaky head. And again, it goes against the namesake. You know, it's not, you're not just sitting there, you know, shaking that thing all kinds. You're just essentially dragging it on the bottom like a Carolina rig. And this is going to be one of the best ways to fish a shaky head. The next technique, again, you're going to cast it out there, and this is a technique that is more in line with the name of a shaky head, but essentially you're just going to let it hit the bottom, and you're just going to keep your rod tip higher, you know, up in the air, and you're just going to shake it, you know. And the goal here is not to like make big hops with the rod tip. You're not like lifting and dropping like you would like a Texas rig as much. Essentially, and the fish just hit something on the surface right there. But essentially you're just trying to shake it in place a little bit, and then you just kind of pull it along. So you are covering some water, so you'll kind of, you know, pull it a few inches, let it sit and shake it, you know. And I thought I just had a bite there. But yeah, and it's just a real slow, methodical shaking technique. And then the final, you know, retrieve is kind of a hop and drop. Okay, but I don't like to do like very tall hops. There's a fish right there. Whoa, he wanted that hop and drop, and that's a decent fish too. But this retrieve, you know, by hopping it and letting it fall back down, you're essentially getting that bait to kind of glide horizontally. This one has pretty cool markings on it, this bass does. So we tried several different techniques, but really it was lifting, tighten up the drag a little bit, lifting and dropping it that really worked. There we go, on the shaky head. Look at that sucker. He wanted it. As soon as I switched it up a little bit to that hop and drop, he smacked it. And you know, a shaky head, like a lot of techniques, does have a nice glide to it on the fall. And so that hopping technique obviously can be effective. But I would say out of those 3 different fishing styles, you know, dragging it very slowly, more of a rod tip up shaking technique, and also the lift it like half foot or a foot and let it fall back down. Those are the 3 main techniques that you're going to use. Now, again, with any technique, put your own flair into it, you know, really do something different, you know, maybe add some shakes, you know, of the rod tip here and there, however you want to customize these retrieves. But these are the 3 real basic retrieves that are going to catch you fish on a shaky head. This point is like textbook, you know, for throwing a shaky head. It doesn't look like much, you know, above the surface, but as I was, you know, putting over the this point, I saw how far it goes out, and it just slowly tapers out there. Pretty hard bottom too, and that's a big key, is fishing it in hard bottom. Here's a fish. Good fish. On the shaky head. Did you guys hear that? I don't know if you saw that, but you probably heard it. It's a decent one. I love a shaky head bite, man. Well, I love catching them every which way, but shaky head is proven. Strong fish. Strong. There we go. That's a stout little fish. 3 1/4, 3 1/2. Nice, nice, nice. That was too much fun, man. Too much fun. This point, you know, I don't have any mapping for this lake. I mean, it's just a small lake, trolling motor only type deal. And so no map, and this point didn't look like much as I was passing, and I was actually going to this point across the bay, but it's actually real long and slowly tapering, just like I like for a shaky head. And so I spun around and just started, you know, blind casting on it. I mean, I can kind of line things up with my active target too, and see where, you know, where it drops and where it, you know, just continues to come on out towards the main lake. So I can kind of get my bearings with the forward-facing sonar, but really most of the work is being done with the shaky head, just kind of trying to find those sweet spots. And I had actually just got into a little bit more of a hard spot there, or at least a rough spot, you know, because I think it's mostly hard bottom on this point. But there was one little spot where it was either a little patch of rocks or maybe like a little bit of brush or something, and that's where that fish came from. But you know, before we we get too far away from like the tackle aspect of a shaky head, you know, one thing I want to point out is that the type of worm that you want to use with a shaky head is usually a straight tail worm. The SMH worms from Z-Man is about as good as it gets for a shaky head specific worm. I think I'll have to look at the package, see exactly how long it is, but it's like 6.5 or 7 inches long, and that's kind of what you're looking for. But I've fished a lot of worms that are shorter than that, you know, that are smaller, and I've fished some bigger ones. But generally, if you go any bigger, you need to, you know, get one of those like lead shaker style Magnum shaky heads. But yeah, you could put whatever soft plastic worm you want on the back. But as far as colors that you want to focus in on, all right, if I was to pick just a handful of colors that you need for any situation, it would be green pumpkin, this one right here, okay, green pumpkin, June bug, some type of plum or red bug color. Those are June bug and red bug and plum. Those three colors really good during the summertime. So those are the three colors that I definitely throw during the summer a lot, and in dirtier water. And then you know, if you get in an area that still is clean bottom but is surrounded by a lot of vegetation, maybe it's a shell bed that's kind of like just in the middle of a grass bed, watermelon red can be a really good color. But keep it simple with those colors. If you want one color to throw everywhere, green pumpkin is the one. But you know, keep it simple. This is not a complicated technique, and so you shouldn't get it too complicated as far as everything else. And one thing I will say is, like, I prefer to fish shaky heads on some type of defined structure like points or humps or, you know, ledges or something like that. But you can fish it just about anywhere. The biggest key is, you know, you can't really fish it in super thick cover. It's just not going to be as effective as a Texas rig worm is. But, you know, especially if you're fishing from the back of the boat, gosh, you could throw this everywhere around clean bottom and catch them. I mean, it's kind of well known as like one of the top co-angler baits for fishing on the back of the boat. There's a fish. Another good fish. Golly. Freaking drag is all messed up. Oh, that's a big one. That's a 4-pounder. Oh, I love a shaky head. Go. That's a big old meathead. Female. Look at that. Nice. They are on these points and they want the shaky head. Beautiful fish. I'm going to take a picture. All right. Put her back. Pretty textbook. Pretty textbook. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the jig head that you want to use. Like I said before, there's a ton of different jig heads that you might want to use. I usually stick with a ball style head if I'm fishing just real clean bottom. If I get into a little bit more brush, there's one called the SMH jig head, which was designed with this bait in mind. And that's a really good one. It's more bullet shaped and, you know, a little bit more slender. It comes through cover better. So that could be a good one. But I choose between 1/8 ounce and 1/4 ounce, okay? With 3/16 probably being the most used. So it just depends on how deep it is, and you want to keep it on the bottom. So, you know, whatever weight you need to use for that, that's the one. You know, I would say when it comes to, you know, a really good technique to start learning how to structure fish more, you know, aside from the Carolina rig, which kind of requires that you have a bait casting experience, you know, if you only have experience throwing spinning gear, you know, a spinning setup, this is a great technique for you. You know, just get out there. You don't even need electronics. You just need your eyes to be able to see what points look like, you know, the contours, you know, gradually slope out, you know, or just fishing. You can fish steep points. You can fish bluffs with a shaky head. I mean, you can fish a lot of different type of structure with this bait, but it is like one of the best, you know, beginner techniques for fishing structure. You know, and it's just, you just go drag a worm about on a jig head, it's gonna get bit. All right guys, so that does it for today's tutorial on fishing a shaky head. This is an awesome presentation, really super versatile. You can do a lot of things with it, and even fish it around some light to moderate cover. But you know, and like I said, it is not only a great you know, tournament bait presentation. It has been for years, but it's also a really good one for beginners to learn how to structure fish. So if you're looking for a presentation that's a little bit more on the finessey side and that can catch fish in all different seasons, check out a shaky head. Hopefully this video helped. If you have any questions at all about fishing a shaky head, drop a comment below with your question. And if you want me to cover a topic in a future video, also drop a comment below. And remember, all of the links for all the products that I talk about today are in the description below. So use those links. It's a great way to support the channel. And finally, you know, if you have success with any of the tips that I give you on these videos, be sure to reach out either in the comment section or send me an email at sonar@sonarfishing.com. I love hearing those stories. It's one of the best parts about, you know, sharing information on this channel. So thank you guys very much. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I'm going to see you out on the water. Make sure you trust the process.